Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 44 of the Natural Female Muscle Podcast. Today, I welcome a very special guest on the podcast. She is your reigning PNBA Pro Natural Miss Olympia and WNBF Pro World Champ, Beccy PATEMAN. I had the absolute pleasure of witnessing Beccy win both of these titles last year. But of course, this is not where her journey with bodybuilding actually started, as Beccy actually started competing back in 2017. And it's been a really incredible journey for her to get to where she is today as a competitor and as an individual as well. So today I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with Beccy and to finally get her on the podcast. It's been a long awaited episode. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. What an amazing intro that was. I feel honored to be here. Thank you.
No, you're so welcome. Like, honestly, you really did blow me away last year because I saw you for the first time at the Natural Olympia, and I was like, oh my God, who's that? And I think I put some pictures of you on my story, and I think it must have been Lawrence Grieve who replied to me, was like, that's Beccy. I was like,
yeah,
it's insane. I really hope she's doing WNBF Worlds as well. But yeah, it was incredible. And whenever I see things like that, I'm always so intrigued to see, okay, that's really cool, that physique, but what has gone into obviously making you the athlete that you are today, and what's it taken to get there, which I'm so excited to talk about. So I always think that a really nice place to start, just to obviously get an introduction to yourself, is let's go way beyond like before competitive bodybuilding. What was your background like for you, like growing up when it came to sports or anything like that? Did you have any early introduction to competing or a sporting background at all?
Yeah, so I grew up as the youngest of 8 kids. Most of the older siblings had moved out, so it was me and my 3 older brothers. And we were all quite active. So my parents got us into soccer and little athletics when we were quite young. So we were always kind of, I guess, sporty. And my whole sort of upbringing, we were at different carnivals and things like that. So yeah, we were quite active when we were young.
Yeah. Did you ever find that created a bit of a competitive edge as well amongst you, or was it generally quite friendly?
It was a lot of fun, but I must say that is probably what stemmed that competitive edge from quite a young age, definitely. And I think also just seeing my brothers do very well in their sporting, they were like very good sprinters. I wasn't, I was the thrower. But it was always very inspiring to me, and I think that did make me that little bit more competitive in trying to do really well in sport. So yeah,
definitely. How did that then go from, you know, just being sporty and doing things with your siblings to eventually, I'm assuming, transitioning into just training in general, where it all probably began?
Yeah, so it is a bit of a long story, really, but as a kid, I was, like I said, quite heavily into sports. And then I hit my teenage years, and for some reason in my small town, I guess girls playing sport wasn't really like, I don't know, it wasn't very popular or the thing to do. So I kind of shied away from my sports, which I wish I never did. However, this, like, my whole story is the reason why I am where I am today. So, you know, it is what it is, but I did spend quite a long time away from sports, not doing much at all really, and kind of got into a bit of a dark place where I gained quite a lot of weight. Took me down a bit of a weight loss journey. And then, yeah, I guess during that sort of time when I was trying to find myself again, I was going through this weight loss journey, my brothers sort of guided me into the gym because that's where they were still very sporty. And then, yeah, once I kind of went to the gym for the first time and they showed me what to do, I was just hooked. I basically went to the gym almost every single day since then, like, you know, 5-6 times a week. So I've been hooked since when I was about maybe 16, 17 years old.
No, that's amazing. I bet it must have helped so much as well to have your brothers to actually introduce you into the gym too, because I know that sometimes is such a barrier for a lot of females, especially because I think just like yourself, and I was in a very similar situation, a lot of females end up going into the gym because they maybe aren't feeling very confident in their physiques at the time. And the idea of going in, and even like the thought of being on stage in bodybuilding in years from there, it's just like a crazy idea. But you know, at the start we're maybe not super confident to kind of go and do everything. So did that help you a lot with just kind of easing you into that transition?
Oh, absolutely. I was so grateful to have my brothers. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know if I ever really would have. And I guess, like, looking back, I was extremely intimidated. I remember having a conversation with one of my brothers one day. I was very upset and crying because I wasn't happy with myself and I knew I had to lose some weight. And I remember having this conversation and saying, you know, like, I want to go for a run and I want to be active, but I just don't want to leave the house, and I didn't want to be seen. I didn't even want to jog past my neighbors. And my brother said, well, you know what, the minute you go out and you're running, like you're running past your neighbors, you're running laps around them while they're sitting down, probably watching television. And I just remember that kind of sitting with me and going, you know what, that's so true. I'm doing something for me, and, you know, it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. And that was kind of my first kind of, I don't know, that's kind of what got me out of the house. And they actually helped me write like a home program. So I had a couple of dumbbells at home, and I started doing some workouts at home. And that's where I sort of started initially losing weight until I felt a little bit more confident. And that's when I eventually got into the gym. So it was like a really lengthy process before I actually felt comfortable to even walk into a gym. So, yeah.
No, that's incredible though. It will be insanely comforting for so many people to hear that, because like you look at you now, like, you know, WNBF Pro Champ, you think, oh, you know, there's no way that she's never not felt super confident in herself or been able to just kind of get after it. But we all have to start and transition from somewhere. And you were quite young at the time, right, as well? Like I think you said you were about 17.
Yes, yeah, when I first sort of started this journey. But absolutely, you're so right. I've even had people say to me, like, you know, you've always been confident, or you've always had that body, or how would you know how I feel? And it's just like, I guess, I feel like it's really easy to kind of look at someone from the outside and think you know everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people are going through things, I guess you just don't even realize.
Yeah.
Or
So
have been through something. Yeah.
100%. And I mean, to even go from that position you were in to then obviously eventually deciding to compete, like you say, it was such a gradual kind of process. But what did that process like actually then start to look like for you when it came to then, you know, gradually getting into the gym? How long did it take you when it then came to, you know, starting to train like a bodybuilder and then eventually having those thoughts of, oh, maybe I might get on stage?
Yeah, well, I guess once I was training in the gym, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of going on bodybuilding.com and looking up different programs and just kind of doing things for fun. And yeah, and then it wasn't until I met a local bodybuilder in a gym, and he kind of said to me like, oh, I think you've got like a really good potential. And I didn't really know too much about bodybuilding. I looked up to people like on Instagram and things like that just looked strong and had great physiques, but I'd never really thought about the idea of bodybuilding, and honestly never thought that I had what it took to stand on stage. So hearing that, I think, is what kind of went, like, it kind of, I had thoughts to sit with then where I was like, I wonder, like, what if, like, could I do that? I wonder if I actually could do that. And yeah, and then he kind of took me under his wing and made me a program, and I started following it. And then he took me to a show, and I watched my first show, and yeah, I just got this like fire in my belly that I wanted to do it. It was kind of like something out of my comfort zone. And I guess in my head, I always thought for my first show, like, I'll just do the prep, and if I don't stand on stage, then, you know, that's good enough. Yeah, so, and then I did it.
No, that's epic. I think you kind of, when you start to get that idea of, oh, I could do this, I really want to do it, I think you kind of just have to make yourself take that leap. And like you say,
Yeah.
you try the prep, and the worst thing that happens is like you decide not to get on stage, but the best scenario is you get on stage and you just do it and you see how you get on. Because I think everyone always thinks, oh, I'd love to do that, but maybe I never will. And you just have to commit to it and just appreciate and trust that you can do it. And I'm sure that I suppose like finally meeting someone in the bodybuilding industry definitely helps, because you have a bit of an in. And before that, like, as much as we think now like the bodybuilding industry is this big thing and we're all a part of it, when you're not quite in it, it feels like something very distant and very different. But that prep then that you went through, that first prep with your first coach, what was that experience like for you? What was even like your awareness like of bodybuilding at the time, even when it came to, you know, like goals and categories and things like that?
I had absolutely no idea. I was so fresh. I had no idea. I was Googling things and I was watching YouTubes and I was looking up like Nicole Wilkins and people like that I was kind of, you know, watching and getting some inspiration. But the whole journey was incredible. I guess like looking back on that, and it's so fun to look back when I first started, looking back at my first posing sessions and just seeing how far I've come since then. It was difficult, but it was the best thing. I had a really good experience for my first prep. Yeah.
That's amazing. Did you really make sure with that first prep as well that you kind of just enjoyed it? Because I know that a lot of first timers probably struggle, I suppose, like more so now. I don't know, like even like social media in like 2017, 2018 is so different to, I suppose, the way that it is now, with like how much people compare or focus on this, and everyone sees your Instagram story and sees what you're doing. And did you feel like it was quite easy for you to be more so just like present and just focus on yourself in that first prep that you had?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, like I said, my Instagram, like I wasn't really into the bodybuilding world at all. So I can't even remember what sort of things were on Instagram and Facebook back then, but it definitely wasn't a lot of bodybuilding. There wasn't a lot of amazing physiques to kind of, you know, make yourself, I don't know, like second guess what you're doing. Or I was very much in my own world, enjoying the process, learning a lot. And it was just a lot of fun. I was excited to meet new people. And like I said, I was just excited to see if I could actually step onto the stage on the day, which I did. And that was pretty much the only thing I was looking forward to, is just seeing if I could push myself to do it.
And you obviously also did well in your first show as well, which I think definitely helps. But what I'd be interested to know, like, was that a solidifying factor for you when it came to, oh, okay, I'm good at this, I enjoy this, I want to keep doing it? Or had you already realized throughout that prep, regardless of the result, that I really like to do this and I want to take this further?
Yeah, it was definitely the journey, I think, for me. While I was in that first prep, I was definitely thinking this is a lifestyle that I really enjoy. And it just became very natural to me. Creature of habit, I suppose. I just kind of fell into it. And I really enjoyed it. And I didn't really mind what the outcome was going to be of that show. I knew I wanted to do more and experience more.
No, that's immense. And you obviously came away then from that season, that was 2017, and then you did compete again 2018, 2019. So what was the like decision-making process for you like at that point, when you then decided, oh, I'm going to go again next year? And even after 2018, obviously deciding to go again too, because I know that back seasons can be obviously relatively demanding.
Yes, it was definitely challenging, but I suppose for me it was more about, I don't know, it's this like new world to me. There was so much out there. And once I realized, you know, after my first show, I was like, wow, that was amazing. I wonder what, you know, this federation's like. I wonder how many people I can meet if I do, you know, different things. I just wanted to kind of get my feelers out there and try everything and meet as many people as I could. And I guess that was all I was thinking, is yes, it's challenging, but I knew that I would grow a lot as a person. Like, if I can do this, what else can I do? And I think I just kept setting myself goals and new shows, and and I just worked towards them to see what would happen. Really, it was a bit of trial and error.
Yeah, I actually think that's one thing that's really cool when I like look through, I suppose, like your resume of shows, is that
Yeah,
you did do so many different shows, like different federations, different classes, different things.
yeah,
And I think that's something that I suppose a lot of competitors maybe lack, especially in like their early years of competing, is that they've got like tunnel vision on just like this
yeah,
federation, this goal. And there's so many options. I know, especially in Australia as well, you have so many different federations and so many different categories. Do you think that helped you a lot with your journey to actually open up your options and not necessarily just narrow down or fixate on this one thing and you have to achieve this one title, otherwise, you know, everything else kind of doesn't matter, which I know is a mindset a lot of people get into.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it did kind of keep it fun for me, really. It took away that, yeah, like you said, like sort of like that pressure to do really well in one particular federation or one particular category. It was kind of, it just made it a lot more fun, I think. Yeah.
What did you learn then when you came away from that 2019 Pro? Because that was obviously the year that, I think, did you win your PNBA Pro card that year? What was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was obviously quite a big year for you, winning a PNBA Pro card as well. What, before I get carried away, what was that actually like?
It was incredible. It was very unexpected. And I think, to be honest, that's when a bit of a switch flicked for me. When I had that moment of, oh my gosh, what just happened? And then I think for me, that was like, oh wow, like this is something that I can actually get competitive in.
Yeah.
And I think that is where the fun turned into a bit more of a tunnel vision. Okay, it's go time. That was kind of my moment there.
Yeah, because that was also the year you went to the natural Olympia that year, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you also came sixth, which obviously still is like no mean feat, but
Yeah.
you went from that sixth place in 2019 to then obviously winning it in 2023, which is, it also just shows how, I suppose, like from even entering the pro ranks, like it took you then that 4 years to then go to win that show. And it's like,
Yeah.
once you enter those levels, like there's still always kind of levels that you can move up from there. And was that, I suppose, was that like a bit of a reason why you then decided to take a little bit of time out before the next season, or was that just kind of generally where you were with life as well?
It's a little bit of both, really. So we also had COVID during that time as well. So I guess that was a bit of a forced break, really. But to be honest, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because if I didn't have that forced break, I probably would have just kept going back to back. But when I had that break, I had a lot of time to obviously think. I had time to grow as a person, mentally, physically. But it also made me realize just how important it is to have that break. I know it's, you know, people get kind of like addicted, I suppose, to shows, and, you know, they just want to keep going. But I just realized how much I can grow both physically and mentally with more time. It also allowed me to have a bit more of a social aspect to my life during that time, but also just to push really hard, bring my calories back up to like a really decent amount, and to grow as much, you know, tissue as I could before getting back on stage. So
yeah. It's one of those things where when you're kind of like in it and you keep going and going, you just sometimes like realize, okay, I probably would benefit from like coming up to higher body fats for a little bit, or doing things with family or doing things with friends and stuff, because you are in such a different place, not just like physiologically, but psychologically as well when you prep, that you don't always realize how much it kind of changes you until you kind of come away from it. You obviously did also make some like amazing improvements through those timeframes as well. What is your like general approach in off season as well? I'd be interested to know when you go in, do you tend to take a little bit more of a relaxed approach, or are you very much focused on like making improvements for those next seasons?
Again, I'd say that's a bit of both as well. Like I'm very, very structured in the sense that, you know, I train very hard. And I know what areas I want to bring up, and I've got a very, you know, like I'm in the gym to do work, and I know that, so I'm always very focused there. In terms of nutrition, I guess you could say I'm a bit more flexible in the off season, making sure I'm, you know, getting adequate protein. I'm trying to get enough rest, but I guess it's not as strict as when I start prep. I've got to live a life like everyone.
No, I think that's really, really good to reflect that, because again, it's just another one of those things that I think people stress about maybe too much at different points. And one of the best things, and I already get this just through talking to you for 20 minutes, and I see this with like all of the top athletes that I speak to, is that you're generally low stress and you just enjoy what you do above anything else. Because I think there's so many bodybuilders who they like pressurize themselves and they're almost like driving stress into something that at the end of the day, like we do because we enjoy it more than anything else.
100%.
And I think that's a really, really good message to put across. But those improvements that you made over that time frame, like definitely showed 2021 and then again last year. I think it's quite interesting how like you did definitely take obviously some amazing results in 2021 as well, but it was always just like gradual steps forward, which I think is really cool because again, sometimes you see people who come from zero to hero all of a sudden, and people think that if their journey is taking them maybe like longer to get all the way to the top, that they're just not good at something. What would you say that you've maybe like learned, or what would you say to those people who feel like they're maybe not good enough because they feel like the progress or the steps forwards are taking them kind of more time than they might think that they should?
Just keep going, enjoy the process, like just keep showing up for you, because before you know it, you'll be there and you'll look back and it will feel like yesterday. Like time flies. Just keep pushing on and try and enjoy every single day, because time does go really quickly.
Yeah, it definitely does. And
Yeah.
I think for you, especially when you obviously took that, I kind of put it in the notes like that clean sweep season last year, it probably means more because you know how long you've been working at it. Because at the end of the day, like bodybuilding is not just about, oh, you just come out of nowhere and just won all these shows. It's like, no, you've been doing this for like years and years and years and years. And that's what you're reflecting on stage. So that season that you did take last year, what was that overall experience just like for you from start to finish?
So overwhelming. The whole experience was, it was honestly amazing. Really, really unexpected again. Like all I do every day that I'm in the gym is I'm just working harder to improve the last version of myself. And so whatever the outcome is, it's always, you know, it doesn't really matter in the long run. It's just as long as I was better than previously. And that's all I wanted. So to be able to come away with all the wins and all the titles, and, you know, that's just kind of a cherry on top for me. So yeah, it was absolutely incredible. And I think it did mean like a lot to me because I was working so hard for it. And as we mentioned before, when I was over in Olympia for the first time in 2019, it's almost like I knew coming sixth that year, I just knew that I had to go away and work really hard. And I didn't want to go back until I felt like I could do well again. You know, like I wanted to really do better than I did previously. So yeah, to win it was kind of, it gives me goosebumps even talking about it now. Like it was honestly one of the best things.
How did you feel when you came away from that Olympia win, knowing that you were obviously going to Worlds, which I think was the next weekend or maybe 2 weekends afterwards? Was that ever something that at any point in that season you started to think like, oh, okay, like I'm winning now, so I could win next weekend? Because I know it's such a hard battle to sometimes face as a competitor, because like you said yourself, it's all about being your best self, and as a result, the outcome doesn't really matter. But you then know, like, oh, okay, like I'm kind of like Miss Olympia now, and I'm going into WNBF World. So even though it's a different lineup, how did you feel kind of going into that show off the back of the win the previous week?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts. It was a bit of like a almost bittersweet kind of moment where at the very start, I was kind of like, I felt pressure straight away, because I was like, oh, well, I've won this. Now I feel like I have to win the next thing. And it was almost like if I didn't win the next thing, then the title didn't matter anymore. So I had that initially. I felt a lot of pressure. But then when I took some time to really think about it and sit with it, I realized that I had achieved more than I was even hoping to achieve. I had achieved, honestly, my biggest goal already. So I'd already won in so many ways. The fact that I was even able to stand on the WNBF stage over in Seattle was a win in itself. So I had already won. And by the time I was going there, I had never competed there. I had no idea what to expect. Yeah, so I had absolutely no pressure or stress by the time I was there, because I was just happy to be there.
I think it's exactly why having like reflection and also like being super present as a competitor is so important, because Otherwise, you're like always focusing on the next thing and not actually taking a moment to soak up what you've actually already achieved, which can be so hard. You know, you've got another show to do. It's like you say, it's finding that balance of, yes, focusing on the next show, but also taking pride in the accomplishments that you have actually achieved up to that point.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd also be really interested to know, with obviously that prep, I think, coming away from just how it felt with the achievements as well, the actual look, and I suppose the bodybuilding part of that prep was an incredible look. And you had fantastic, obviously, condition for FitBody, which was where you competed in WNBF, but also the PNBA figure, which is kind of like, they're pretty much like the same sort of level in terms of muscularity and condition, which I know, again, some people like find confusing when you're looking at categories from different federations, but it's probably why for you, having done so many different federations helps, because you know where you stand with different ones. But what was the experience of the prep like when it came to just simply getting that lean? How do you find that process? Because as much as you look at it on stage and it looks super cool, like I know that it's easy to get that lean. So how do you find that? And also, what does it generally take for you as well within a prep to get there? Is it easy? Is it quite difficult? What's that like?
Yeah. Look, it is quite difficult for me, to be honest, to get that lean. I do naturally, like, I'm quite lucky in a sense that naturally I can build a lot of muscle quite easily. That's genetically, I do build muscle easily. However, I do also naturally hold a pretty high body fat percentage in my off season. And that's kind of always been me. So I normally need a longer prep. Unfortunately, I do need to diet quite low on calories, and I do have to drive up my expenditure. So towards the end of a prep, you know, I'm doing sometimes an hour of cardio, 15,000 steps, training really hard in the gym. So it can be exhausting. And it is really hard in those moments to enjoy the process. There are times where it's kind of like, this is exhausting. And however, it is usually only the very, very back end of a prep. So, you know, maybe the last 4 weeks or something where it's really challenging. But I must say, having my coach Joey on board with me for this prep was, you know, unreal. He was so good, and it was probably the best planned prep I've had, in the sense that I didn't actually get that really terrible, you know, lead feeling, diet fatigue until the very end of my prep. So it was definitely a prep where I could handle it a lot better.
Was that the first year that you'd worked with Joey as well?
Yeah, so I did work with Joey for the off season and the comp prep leading into that season. Yeah.
Did that, I mean, that obviously will have helped so much for him to obviously get to know you better as the athlete, and then enable you to map out a prep that was probably a lot more, like you say, kind of like efficient and didn't feel as brutal as maybe previous preps.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Was there anything that you think you did within that prep that, and you say, like, do you say yourself, kind of made it feel less fatiguing? Was it a case of the way you managed training? Was it a case of like running diet breaks or refeeds? Or how do you think that you and Joe, or was it even just simply him knowing you so well that allowed you to kind of manage that prep to make it a bit more effective?
Yeah, I think it was just having really good communication with Joey, being able to kind of say like, hey, you know, I'm struggling this week, or, you know, can we do this a bit better? Or, you know, like we always kind of chatted like very frequently, and we were able to make little changes here and there when needed. You know, we might have a day where I have a bit more calories or something, and yeah, or we might have had like a deload week if it was necessary. So we were able to kind of just work things in as it was needed. And yeah, I guess we made a really good team.
Do you think that now, obviously you've done so many preps, that you have a much better awareness of like when you actually feel genuinely like fatigued or tired or drained? Because I think that's something that can be so hard for a lot of competitors to know, whether either overshare to their coach that they're really, maybe they just need to crack on, or they don't say that they're struggling because they don't want to appear like they're complaining. And I think it can obviously be something that takes a while to develop that understanding. So is that something that you feel like you kind of understand a little bit better now, or are you still learning that as the preps go along?
No, I definitely think I am quite in tune with my body now, and I can definitely tell the difference between just, you know, being fatigued due to, I guess, the normal process of a prep, and then being like actually exhausted, like my body needs something. So yeah, I think by now I've definitely got that, you know, in tune. But it does take time. It takes a long time to kind of really understand and listen to your body and know what it needs. Definitely.
Yeah, it's such a great point to make, because as much as there's like the time aspect of building more muscle over time, there's also that like understanding of your body, because getting on stage and getting in great condition but also displaying muscle is about learning not to also put your body in a hole and things like that during prep. So I think the more that you're able to understand that, the better. So yeah, it's great, and obviously clear to see that you've got a great understanding of that too. I think aside from even just your coaching relationship, which clearly already is in such a great place, and that's such an important part of the puzzle as a bodybuilder. I know that your partner is also a bodybuilder and PNBA Pro. How much does that positively affect your journey with bodybuilding?
Oh, so much. It's really, really good to have someone in your corner who understands what you're going through. Mark had actually, that was his first competition prep where he got his PNBA Pro
Amazing.
card. Yeah, it was an awesome prep and accomplishment for him. But even just going through that one comp prep, he completely understands the process, what I'm going through, how I'm feeling, and he's an extremely supportive person. So he was always really, really good to be there, just to listen, to help me. Like, he's just, yeah, so it was really, really good to have him in my corner.
Yeah, because I suppose when you are obviously very lean, or even when you just focus on a goal, there can be points where, I suppose, not that you become like distant in a relationship, but you're just tired or you're low energy, whatever it may be. And having somebody who understands that that's just how you feel, it makes a huge difference, because it pulls off a stressor, and also they can just be helpful for you on show days and things like that, which I guess makes just such a huge difference.
It really does, absolutely.
Yeah. I suppose coming related to, but coming away from that a little bit, I'd be really interested to know how much of a difference also like your career has made on your bodybuilding journey, or just like in general with bodybuilding, because obviously you mentioned to me that previously you were kind of like working full-time in an office job at one point, and working within the fitness industry part-time alongside of that. And how much has that changed? Because now I know you're working kind of full-time in the fitness industry. Has that changed your like journey with bodybuilding at all, in terms of making it easier, or how did you even just simply like manage bodybuilding whilst you were in a full-time office job as well? Because I know that a lot of people sometimes struggle with that.
Yeah, so during actually all of my contest preps, I'm just trying to think. I think, yeah, all of them, I was working two jobs, working in an office and then doing something fitness related, because that was my sort of hobby passion. Yeah, and most of the time I was working some sort of shift work as well. So I understand completely how difficult that is, especially doing an office job where you're mostly seated for most of the part of the day. So for me to be able to, I guess, manage getting in all my steps and my training and all of that, I would usually set myself a very strict sort of routine, I suppose. So I would get out like a diary or on my phone, and I would write everything down. So I would write in my work hours, all of like the things I had to do that day, whether it be my training, my cardio, and I would just try to, I guess, after I'd written down my working hours, I'd then find out how much time I had either side of that and where I can slot everything in. And it was very, very strict. But I think by following something like that, it makes it less stressful on you, because you can just get up every day and look at your, your routine, what you've planned out for the day, and just follow it. And then you know that you're ticking all the boxes. So I guess that's a little tip there for someone, if it helps.
No, it definitely is. It's like it sometimes seems from the outside like, how am I going to fit all these things in? But
Yeah.
when you just have to be organized, and that's kind of like the honest truth. I mean, if you want to get it done, like, you will get it done regardless of the circumstance. I think it's so easy to be in a position where you think, oh, if I just had more time in the day, or, you know, it's easy for you because you have freedom in your day or whatever it is. But like you make it work in a situation. People do make it work just as you yourself. And it only becomes an issue or something that like becomes an excuse when you allow it to be, you know.
That's right.
And I think if you want to make, if there is a will, there is a way to do it.
Exactly. And I think by having that plan, it really does help. Even by doing things like, you know, parking further away from work, walking in your lunch break, all those types of things, going to the supermarket and doing extra laps. It all adds up.
Exactly. But obviously alongside that as well, you were, like you say, doing those like side hustle things, the things that you were passionate about, which have now become your full-time work. And that's another demand in itself to kind of continue to do that. But would you say for you, like just having, I suppose, the drive and the vision that that's what you wanted to do, and knowing that it sometimes takes a bit more time to get there? Because I think sometimes a lot of people, and I kind of did a very similar thing with myself, even with what I was doing a lot of other jobs and other things before this was my full-time work, but you just have to kind of put in, I suppose, like the extra hours and appreciate that like with time it will get there, and you kind of have to continue to have that vision and know that it's going to take a little bit more work now, but it will eventually pay off, hopefully, in the future.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Yeah, keep going.
Does that help you, or have you noticed a difference at all now with how bodybuilding has been for you recently, with not having to work in an office? Or is it something that at least like moving forwards, when you look at future preps, you can see how it might make things a little bit easier?
Yeah, I definitely think moving forward it will be easier. This is a very new thing for me. So at the moment I am putting in all the additional hours, and I'm struggling actually to fit my training in now, even though I'm working in my own PT studio, which is quite funny. But I do know that moving forward it will be a lot easier for me for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, that one, because I think sometimes it's easy from the outside and you think like, oh, this will make things so much easier with bodybuilding, but then you actually realize that you're probably busier with a lot of things.
Yes.
There's always stuff to do, whereas, you know, if you're in an office job, like you say, you block out the times, you're in work here, whereas now you probably think, oh, I've got this to do, or I've got this client, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's probably just like another hurdle that you then face in prep, when you realize that, okay, I actually need to be like more straight with my time. But again, like you have the organization skills to do that. And that's something that will definitely cross transfer really well.
Yes, hopefully we'll see.
Definitely. One thing that I kind of wanted to mention, because I know you mentioned it to me, was that you suffered a lot with social anxiety, a lot across your life. And this is something that I suppose a lot of people would suggest doesn't necessarily mix very well with bodybuilding and getting on stage. So how have you found that, or have you found that bodybuilding has maybe helped you with this at all? And have you ever found that you've encountered like any hurdles with bodybuilding, especially the competition side of things, as a result of having that background?
Yeah, I would say it has definitely helped. When I was, you know, just starting out, I didn't think that it would, and it was scary and very, very intimidating. However, I think it's always, for me anyway, it was always about getting out of my comfort zone. And I found that every single time I did something that was scary, I grew from it. And when I realized that every time I was accomplishing something I had told myself I couldn't, or I thought that I couldn't, and I did it, it was like this little bit of like something grew in me, like confidence. I was growing as a person. And once I realized that, I think that's kind of what started getting me out of my shell. You know, I started being able to, and I think also having, I guess, like a community of like-minded people who are doing very similar things. You have people who you can talk to about, you know, how was your prep? How did you find the show? And so I guess that social aspect, I started to grow as a person, being able to communicate better. And to be able to stand on stage in front of people and perform. Like I've never been able to even, you know, I used to have an anxiety attack in a busy supermarket. So I'd say I've definitely come a long way, and bodybuilding's played a very, very positive role in that.
That's absolutely incredible. I think that can go amiss so much, is from the outside, it looks so much like it's just about the physique and all you just do this is you just care about what your body looks like. But
yeah,
it's
so much more.
Yeah, so much more than that. And it
Yeah.
truly does teach you so much how you grow as a person in so many different ways. And that's incredible to hear how much that's transformed that journey for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really easy for people to have, I guess, negative thoughts around the idea of bodybuilding, and to just, I guess, see it for what it's, I guess, advertised as, or, you know, whatnot. But yeah, no, it's a lot more, and you can learn so much, you can grow so much, you can meet so many people. There's a lot of positives in bodybuilding.
Have you ever met any people or had any people in your life that have seen bodybuilding from a negative side of things? Or have you generally, especially with having such a big family, have you always just had a lot of support surrounding your competitive journey?
I'll say that I've always had amazing support, but I'd say there's definitely some people who don't understand it very well. They support me in everything I do, which is amazing. I'm very blessed. However, yeah, I would just say that not a lot of people quite understand why I keep doing it, but that's okay.
Have you learned to just separate from that? Because I personally find a similar thing. And I think that as a female and as somebody who does bodybuild, you kind of appreciate that not everyone gets it. They'll be supportive, but they don't get it. And that's kind of okay. And learning to try and push it too much is important.
Yes, 100%. I've definitely had to learn to do that. So I guess I just bring it back to, I'm doing it for me. I love it. It's what I do, and it's okay if you don't like it, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. You know, it's my life. So
love that. Agree with that 100%. I suppose like the main thing I kind of want to finish this episode on is just kind of asking you really where you go from here, because following on from that incredible season last year, I suppose you've had like a decent base coming away from that as well, from that prep. What are your plans? What are your plans moving forward? Have you got plans to get back on stage and defend those titles, or where are you at the moment with your bodybuilding journey?
Yes. You know, to be honest, I had moments of thinking like, you know, is this it for me? You know, will I just hang up the heels? But that didn't last very long. I can't stay away from the stage for very long. So I'm already thinking about competing again, and potentially end of next year.
Amazing.
Taking a little bit of time, see what I can do in this off season, and maybe come back and try something a little different. Maybe potentially women's bodybuilding, but we'll see.
Oh, that's amazing. I was going to ask if you ever had, because your whole trajectory bodybuilding has been like always getting better, which is amazing, because I think that's what bodybuilding is. I was going to ask whether you had like plans to, you know, I think women's bodybuilding would be super cool, but also even, do you ever have any goals of like, for example, going to, you know, non-tested federations like the IFBB and trying to prove yourself as a natural athlete in federations like that as well?
I have actually competed with IFBB once before in 2018. It was a great experience, and I've definitely thought about it. Who knows?
Yeah, there's so many options, and no matter what the goal, I suppose, is always to get better. But I'd love to see you in women's bodybuilding. So
thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that would be epic. But I have to say just a huge thank you for coming on today. It's been incredible to talk to you, incredible to hear so much more about your story. And I know so many people are going to really enjoy listening to this episode and taking inspiration away from that as well. So thank you for coming on. Would you like to let everyone know where they can find you and plug any of your businesses or anything like that as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really hope that something out of that does help someone. So I guess you can find me on Instagram, Beccy PATEMAN, or for my business, Unrivaled Physiques with 2 L's, and unrivaledphysiques.com.au for coaching inquiries.
Amazing. I'll make sure to link all of that below. So everyone make sure to go follow Beccy and all of her respective businesses. Thank you so much again for coming on today. You've been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much to everyone who has listened. If you have enjoyed this episode, which I'm sure you have, please make sure to like, subscribe, rate, share the podcast and tag us as well if you have listened. But yeah, thank you so much guys for listening, and I'll be back with another episode next week.